Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me for my newest town hall this morning. Today, we're going to be talking about how to keep your kids engaged in education during this quarantine. I'm sure a lot of you out there are struggling with this problem as we speak. So thankfully, we have Lisa Bruck with us today. She is an educator. She has a master's degree in secondary education. She's also a parent. So she understands both sides of the struggle, right? Teaching kids and also teaching her kids. And she lives in Pennsylvania, but teaches in Maryland. So she's going to be able to give us an insight as to how both states are doing it. And she also does these amazing videos, which I love. Even though I'm not a kid, I watch every one of them through the Earth and Space Science Laboratory. They're the I Spy videos, so I definitely want to talk about those because they're awesome. So thank you, Lisa. I so appreciate you joining me today.
Absolutely. This will be a great experience.
Good. So can you just kind of give us a little bit about your background and how long you've been teaching and how you ended up living in PA but teaching in Maryland?
Sure. So I have been in education. This will be finishing up year 26.
Wow.
So I know, wow, I can't even believe it myself. So it began, I started my first 20 years at the high school level. So I taught earth and space science. I taught physics, a little bit of chemistry, a little bit of biology. And we started off, my husband and I, teaching on the eastern shore of Maryland. And in about 15 years ago, we moved to Littlestown, Pennsylvania. And now we live in Gettysburg. But we still do work in the Maryland system. I'm actually only just miles away, 20 miles away from where I work, just outside of Frederick, Maryland. So now what my job entails is I work still through the school system of Frederick County, but my primary audience are little guys from first through fifth grade. So it's definitely a different experience, but it's been great because I've had an opportunity to see the challenges and rewards of teaching the little guys and the big guys in education.
So with you, you have children. So obviously, not obviously, are your kids going to school in Pennsylvania?
Yes.
Okay.
So I have 3 boys,
Yeah.
one at each level. So I have a graduating senior, and that's, of course, been really hard.
Yeah.
The way to end his senior year wasn't exactly what we had hoped for.
Yeah.
I have an 8th grader and a 3rd grader. So one at each level.
Wow. So having kids that are being educated at home by Pennsylvania teachers, and then you educating kids at home who are living in Maryland, what differences do you see in approaches between the Pennsylvania, the way the teachers in PA are doing it versus how you're doing it in Maryland? Is there any significant differences?
I think there are a lot of similarities in both, because remember, and many of your listeners, watchers may not realize that in Maryland, the education system is done on a county-wide system. So in Pennsylvania, it's done by districts.
Right.
So my children go to Gettysburg area school district, whereas in Frederick County, that is all in one system. So you have, I know we have 10 high schools in Frederick County, but they're all under one jurisdiction. So one superintendent,
Yeah.
etc. So there can be some good things about that, and some other things. There's good and maybe not as convenient. In a large school system, you do have a lot more opportunities, um, and maybe some different ways to help students, some resources that might be available because you are dealing with a much larger group. So
Right.
instead of having a staff of 100, you have 10,000. So that's a lot more brains to pick,
Yeah.
to help innovate, especially during this time when many are trying to come up with ways to keep the kids motivated.
Hmm.
But the one thing that I've found in both type of learning environments is that we just want the students to feel involved and included and needed.
Yeah.
And that is so important, because without that, they're not going to want to learn. If they don't feel like their voice is important, if they, that connection from student to student,
Right.
so important to their ability to learn.
Yeah.
So I know with my own students, and with elementary school children especially, that interaction, because they're little, they don't have cell phones and things like that, and social media that my high schooler has, where
Right.
he can somewhat keep those relationships, um, and feel a connection.
Hmm.
So the one thing that I've really have enjoyed, is that my third grader, every day has, one of the parts of their lesson is, how are you feeling today?
Yeah.
What are you thinking about? And that's really valid. Um, and I think a lot of people may forget that importance, because they're not going to learn anything. They're not going to want to learn anything until they feel connected.
Right.
And that's been the challenge in both, districts that I'm involved in, is making that connection for kids, because once they're connected, they're going to want to learn, they're going to want to perform, they're going to want to do the extra steps
Hmm.
that distance learning involves.
Yeah. How can teachers and parents um, make that connection for them while they're sitting at home? Are they doing, like, we're on Zoom right now, are they doing things on Zoom so they can be in touch with their kids? Are they teaching one-on-one? That's obviously, I have no children, so I'm sure the parents who have kids know that answer, but how do you make that connection and keep them engaged when the Xbox is like 5 feet away, or
Fortnite. That's a big one in my house.
yeah, or
Yeah.
cartoons are on, how do you do that?
So, as parents, as you're trying to, um, keeping a schedule,
Mm.
and I think even for us as adults, we need to keep a schedule. It's okay to stay up late, once in a while, but if you're doing that every single night
Yeah.
and then not getting up till after noon, that can cause some problems.
Yeah.
We do have teachers, and I know in the Gettysburg district, the students do have access to Zoom meetings with their teachers, on a daily basis,
Mm.
which is amazing. Not just for student-teacher relationship, but also kid-kid relationship.
Right. Yeah.
And it's been, um, just so, I remember we had that 2 weeks in March. So there was in both Maryland and Pennsylvania, they treated it like a snow emergency.
Mm-hmm.
So there wasn't really much going on as far as, any kind of direct learning. That first time where the kids were able to see each other and Zoom together and talk and connect, that was priceless. I mean, even the teachers, the teachers have just been, and I have been happy to see the media in a lot of ways have showcased a lot of the amazing work that educators have done
Mm-hmm.
to keep kids engaged.
Yes.
Because like you just mentioned, there are a lot of distractions
Mm-hmm.
that might not necessarily be the most educational.
That's true.
So, keeping that relationship and connection, educators, that's like our superpower. We will get the kids caught up.
Right.
It's gonna happen. Don't worry, they're gonna learn the quadratic formula. They're they're going to learn, the parts of speech. It's all good. We want kids, especially the younger ones, they hear a lot of scary stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And just a lot of different points of view, and it's confusing. I mean, for adults, we're confused and apprehensive and anxious. So for parents, I think number one is you gotta make sure that your kids are in that kind of schedule, do the same thing every day that brings continuity and a little bit of calm in this storm we're in right now.
Yeah. Well, what do parents do if they are unfamiliar with the subject that's being taught? Like, there's a lot of posts floating around on Facebook that have pictures that says, this picture plus this picture equals this, and then this plus, and I look at that and I think, wow, I remember absolutely nothing about algebra. And if I had to teach a kid right now, had to help him with algebra homework, I would be in trouble, because what you don't use, you lose, obviously. But then we have all these apps on our phone and on the computer that help us do the work that we would normally do in our head. Now it's done for us. So what do parents do, and how can they bridge that gap between what they've forgotten and what they have to help their kids learn now that we're all at home?
What's been, again, with my experience with Gettysburg, is that sometimes it's not just the students on the call, but also the parent.
Oh.
And they're kind of getting a refresher. Many of the lessons, teachers have recorded themselves, and then, so there's some relearning that's taking place, that's for sure. But again, parents also need to take some of the stress off themselves. This isn't going to keep kids out of college, or, some whatever aspiration that they might have. So take a little pressure off themselves. It's going to be okay. A lot of the activities and problems that I've seen our students have is a lot of project-based learning. And that's actually been kind of fun. And they've learned a lot during that process. And I know my youngest is actually becoming quite a cook.
Wow.
So there's been some other, some different things that have been learned that might not be, the 3 R's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's something to be said about the creativity that this situation has brought about. And, I find myself wondering, with everybody working at home successfully, is that going to change the landscape of our employment moving forward? And the same way with education.
I think I can, just from what I've experienced,
Yeah.
on both ends as an educator and a parent, I don't think education's going to change too much, because
Okay.
one thing I've heard from many students is, one, and these are coming from kids I never thought I'd hear this from, I can't wait to get back to school. Now, who would have thought that? Um, but it goes back to, well, why do they want to get back there? It's that connection.
Yeah.
You know, learning with someone is a whole lot more fun than just learning by yourself, especially the younger students. Um, so I think parents probably see, yeah, the kids need school. There's that structure. Um, it's definitely, I think, brought to light the importance of educators all around.
Yeah, because I think that's something you can take for granted, whether you're a parent or not a parent, because that happens in a school building completely outside of your view. You're going to work every day, you're coming home, and you don't really, you understand your kids are getting an education, but I don't think a lot of people realize just how much goes into that. And I think it's great that parents now are at home seeing that firsthand, and that teachers are getting the appreciation that they deserve, because you're severely underpaid, overworked, and underappreciated. But yet you do it every single day, regardless of that. And that's amazing.
Well, again, it goes back to that connection. Those relationships are so important
Yeah.
and fulfilling. You hear that same kind of calling with doctors and nurses. You know, it's a calling, and with education, I think, you know, the majority of us, it's what we love,
Yeah.
and we really miss our students. We really, really do. And we worry about them. We think about them all the time.
I bet you do. Because they're your family for, geez, you're with them every single day for an entire year almost.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's emotional. It really is.
Yeah. So how are the districts dealing with children who don't have internet service? Because a lot of my area, where I live, we live in a suburb, but just down the road, you kind of cross over the mountain, and there's a huge swath of children and families who don't have access to internet. So what are they doing to help those children, now that learning is really just over the internet?
Those we kind of talked a little bit about those first 2 weeks when the shutdown began. Those students were first in everybody's minds. How are we going to make this work? Um, Accessibility, and then of course having the technology to be able to access. So, you know, you can look at it in two ways. So you have some students who may not have connectivity. You have others that may have the ability, but they have no technology at home.
Mhm.
You even have the homeless as well. So there's a broad range of things you have to address. And in those 2 weeks, districts across the country were scrambling at how can we get access, availability, technology into the hands of people and do it very quickly.
Mhm.
So one, I know, and I can speak for Maryland. Um, we here in Pennsylvania, we were blessed that we have access and the tools that the students, you know, my boys needed to be able to do their work. In Maryland, hotspots were put into the hands of kids. So there were, you know, deals made with Verizon and other local companies, getting these hotspots in the hands of you know, our at-risk students.
Yeah.
Also, I cannot imagine how many thousands, probably nationwide, hundreds of thousands of Chromebooks, iPads have gone into kids' hands, especially during those, the end of March. It was a tremendous task to go through. One, find out who needs access. What are your needs to be able to access your education? So it was really all hands on deck. So I know for myself, we were, my coworker and I were kind of put on hold. They said, hey, you might be needed to go to these hotspot pickup points to give out, hotspots, or, Chromebooks to students. So it's definitely a task
Yeah.
to make that happen.
And I think it shines a bright light on the inequalities that exist in our educational system too. It's sad that it takes something like this to try to figure out, for our schools to try to figure out how to reach those kids who aren't able to access things like internet and online learning and the computers and laptops and things like that. And I certainly hope that once we move out of this, that doesn't get forgotten about and go back to normal, because those kids deserve the same education as kids who are fully connected, who have a house, a home to live in. So I really hope that these things move forward even past the coronavirus lockdown so that they can have the same shot as everybody else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Completely agree.
Yeah. So if parents, I know you kind of briefly touched on it with like keeping a schedule, but I know parents who are working at home full time. They have kids that they're trying to help educate at home full time. And there's still all the other stuff that life brings you, How do you suggest people juggle it? Do you have any tips or tricks? Because you're really on both sides. You're living it. So what can parents do to kind of help relieve some of the stress?
I think they need to just let go of some things. You have this, I want to be so professional, and it's okay if the dog barks, if you get pulled on your your shirt. I want some milk. I've been on so many meetings, where mommy, 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 and there's kids climbing all over, and at first you could tell people were really kind of stressed out about it, because their job is also a part of their identity and they take it very seriously. But in this time, you got to kind of let some of those things go and relax a little bit and not be so hard on yourself.
Yeah.
We're all just trying our very best to do what's best, for our own families, but also for our employment. So maybe just kind of relax a little bit.
Yeah, that's good for a lot of different scenarios, but it's hard to do sometimes, for people, because like you said, it is their identity to be, professional and have their kids be the best, but I think it's okay to just realize that
we're human.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And we're all learning this together at the same time. It's not like, your neighbor down the street has been through a stay-at-home order in a pandemic before. No, we're all doing it for the first time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And trying to be productive, trying to do our jobs, but also, as a parent, your most important job is to your family, and to make sure that they feel secure and loved during this crazy time.
Yeah, absolutely. Because regardless, I mean, I like I said, I don't have children, but I would imagine as an adult, I can turn on the TV and I can read the news, and I can kind of get a sense of what's going on, and my adult brain can process it and say, is that true? Is that not true? I can deal with things, but children are just kind of, I would imagine, getting this news in bits and pieces, and they don't understand it and they can't process it. And I think that they probably need a lot of help in getting through it, even if they're not saying, I need help getting through it.
And you see that manifested in behaviors, you kind of like, what did you just say? For different behaviors might manifest. Sleep, they have difficulty going to sleep. So those sort of things can, really have to be addressed.
Yeah.
Because it's so important. And even though I have different ends of the spectrum from 18 to 8, I see it in all three of them.
Yeah.
In different ways.
Well, is there anything online or any tools that parents can use to kind of make it easier on them or on the children? Like I saw that ABC Mouse was giving free subscriptions and things like that. Are there any outlets that kids can tap into that are online?
Many of the public libraries around different counties have access where students can get books out. That was the one thing my one son said was, I really miss going to the library day.
Yeah.
Because that was something. I said, well, why don't we get on the library website, and there are books that they can check out
Mm-hmm.
and have access to, and that's all free. Many of like NASA, of course, that's one of my favorites. There's a lot of different organizations that have free videos, games that the kids can play, and a simple Google search could help you find those things.
Well, I know that the Earth and Space Science Laboratory does some really awesome things on Facebook. So you have been a part of that. I see they're called the I Spy videos, and they're short, I would imagine, for attention span. And but they're really awesome. They have like a wide range of different topics. Do you want to just kind of talk about those a little bit?
Yeah, we actually did some research before this all came about to, length of the video, what would be like the perfect time span, and that 10 to 15 minutes is about maximum. So that kind of helped us create what our lessons would look like.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we were used to seeing 18,000 students a year that would come through our facility on science field trips. So we wanted to kind of give some parts of what the students would be seeing during their visit, and kind of use that towards these I Spy videos. And we are up around 33,000 views, which blows my mind. I cannot believe it, but because we have no high-end editing, no fancy actors, it's just us,
Yeah.
trying to teach some science to a very broad range of ages. So that's sort of where it came from. And again, these are all things that are free. We like the Facebook platform because there was that, connection where you could comment and react. And again, that's because we're really big into that, feeling connected and relationships. And especially there were our little our little fan club, they love to interact, especially with some of the animals that they get to see every year.
Mm. Yeah, and that's another perfect example of a resource that parents can use because well, I'll just speak for myself. I'm not embarrassed. I watch them and I learn things, and it's like it's completely entertaining, and you have no idea that you're being taught something in that moment. You know what I mean? It's like it's a way to kind of educate people secretly while they're being entertained, which is brilliant.
Well, we try. We definitely try.
Yeah.
Yesterday, our I Spy video, we actually put our new nuke of bees into our observation beehive. So that was, really fun, a fun episode to film, because, when do you get to see that happen?
Yeah.
Never. Even our students that come to visit, that's not something that they would be, hands-on looking at. So it's been really fun, kind of taking them behind the scenes, looking at some different aspects of the facility and what we have to do to, one, keep all the animals alive, and just some of the pieces of equipment that we have that right now they're not able to access.
Yeah, and I'll put a link to the Facebook page in the comments below this video so that people can log on and check it out and ask questions. And because you cover a broad range of topics there, from animals to space. You did one on astronauts. And so, yeah, it's a huge variety that you have on there, which is definitely a good resource for parents and kids. So
Thank you.
yeah, they're awesome. So thank you so much, for joining us. Do you have any last words of advice for parents out there or for teachers out there, just to kind of get through?
Hang in there.
And that's probably the best advice because it will pass. And like you said, it has no effect on their ability to get into college and things like that.
They will be okay. We just have to, weather the storm and keep them, just keep them hungry to want to know more.
Yeah.
And the way to do that is just, again, to keep those relationships strong, and that creativity will be there. So good luck, everybody.
Thank you so much. And thank you, like I said, thanks for joining me. It's such an important topic, and I know a lot of people are struggling with it. So thank you for that. And hopefully, we'll see each other soon on the other side of this, and kids will be back in school and everything will be back to normal. This will be just a dream at some point.
Thanks for having me, Patty.
Of course. Have a good day.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.